American Institute of CPAs, they place a heavy responsibility on management or its responsibility over the internal control process. The buzzword now is those who govern, and it means the board, Greg and Joe, all the upper management. And what they want is that the internal controls be part of the town's formal policy. And right now, in most cities and towns, internal controls have kind of meandered the way to where they are now. Either because of a statute that says that warrants must be signed, or because of a management letter comment that something we recommended, or because Joe and Mary Ann couldn't reconcile something, so they developed some internal controls to make it easier to reconcile. But seldom in municipals is it because management sits down together as a team and says, you know, what are our risks, what are we doing about it, and developing the internal controls and having a formal policy, so that if the policy doesn't leave with the individual person in the office. So if somebody was in the treasurer's office and they were to leave or retire, that all the controls go with them. So what we recommend, or what I'm recommending, is that that you develop an internal control policy over your cash, your receivables, your revenues, your payroll, and your expenditures. Those are your major functions, cycles. And that they bring them to you, and that you sit down and discuss them and accept them as a board, so that we know these are the steps that we do, and if somebody new comes in, this is what we expect of you to make sure cash reconciles. Somebody might come in and say, I think reconciling cash once a quarter is fine. Well, that's not fine, because your internal control policy says it gets reconciled every month. We have internal control narratives that over those cycles, so I can give them to Joe as a starting point, so that you can have them. And once you get them as a policy, I say, take them, put them in a notebook, and they're fine until something changes, or maybe once a year or something, you just say, as a board document, any new risks, any new things that are going on? No, okay, policy stays the same, and that's it.
There were 4 items. You said cash, receivables, payroll. What was the other one?
Receivables, payroll, expenditures, and, yeah.
What have you found thus far, though, Doug? Have you been coming and going here for a number of years?
Well, you do have good internal controls. It's the documentation part. So, I mean, you have good controls. I mean, you couldn't do all the things right that you're doing right without having good internal controls. I mean, there's good controls, or you wouldn't have a clean management letter like you have now if you didn't have the good controls. It's more of the documentation and making it more formal. That is that issue.
Does this all tie in with the points you make regarding we don't have a policy on credit risk on deposits and interest rate risk?
That's more of an investment policy, yeah. That's something I think that should be addressed too, is that, I think that was in last year's management letter, we talked about it, about developing an investment policy. And right now, the Treasurers Association has on their website a couple of investment policies. And right now, you don't have a lot of, you're pretty conservative in your investments right now. The only things that you have in anything other than CDs or money markets is some of your trust funds. And so it's pretty conservative investments that you have right now. But that's just kind of in our notes to the financial statements. Even if you don't have any investments in those particular areas, we have to disclose that you don't have a policy related to those areas.
Any other questions? All right, next.
The financial statements, I can get into any detail you want, but as an overview, there's 3 reports in here. There's an opinion letter, and that's page 1. It says that the financial statements are materially correct, and that's the first place anybody goes when they're looking at them. At the financial statements, they look at the opinion letter, and it's on page 1. And if they go down in the 3rd paragraph, says, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly, then they move on. Because if there was any if there was any exceptions or qualifications of the report, then they would be in paragraphs before that.
Mhm.
The beginning paragraph just say, what we audited, the second one says what standards we used, and the third one will say, in our opinion, it's been presented fairly. So there's no qualifications in this. And later on in the report, there's in the financial statement, there's a report on internal control and compliance with laws and regulations over the government as a whole. And there were no findings related to that. And then we also have to do a report on internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations over federal grants. And there was no finding, that was a clean report also. So the three reports in here are, clean reports. Most of the financial statements in here are on a different basis of accounting than you use in here. They're not budget basis. So a lot of them aren't real friendly. You can't look at them and say, I know I gave the police department X amount of dollars, and I know they only turned back 20,000, so they should have an expenditure of X. It's just, we're on an accrual basis on most of them. And one of the statements in here, actually, if you gave them $1 million and you knew that they spent all of it, well, and they bought capital assets with it, well, we reverse the expenditure and make it an asset, and we
Yeah.
depreciate it over however
Yeah.
it's useful life. So instead of seeing $1 million expenditure, you might see a $20,000 expenditure instead.
So
kind of-
that explains why your values of free cash don't necessarily match what we believe we had at the end.
That's
Or
right.
what
We
got
also
certified.
include 60 days received
Yeah,
for certain
yeah.
things that we do, yeah.
Okay.
But there is a couple of statements that are at least interesting. Now, page 40 is one statement that is on your budget basis. And this shows all your categories, and it shows the original budget, the final budget, and the actual amounts. And as you go down that, and the variance, whether it's positive or negative variance. And as you go down the far column to the right, you'll see a negative $864,000. And that's the cherry sheet shortfall from the 9C cuts. And so you, that, the budget.
And that, because then that was funded by ARRA money that went to the school directly?
Yeah,
That doesn't show here, or?
some of it went for the school, but what also happened, if you go down, so if you keep going down the bottom, most of that was offset because you didn't spend employee benefits.
Right.
So in order to, some of it moved over to school, but some of it wasn't school-related.
Mhm.
And so the part that wasn't school-related, you
We
offset.
had made adjustments, yeah.
Yeah, you said, well, okay, well, we didn't get $800,000, so we won't spend $700-something thousand of the employee benefits to offset that, the negative impact. But in a normal year, and the other thing you'll look down, if you look down in the expenditures, there's a negative $414,000 for DPW, Highways and Public Works. That's the snow and ice deficit. So they actually, when they're figuring free cash, the way free cash is generated is if your revenues come in at more than budget, or your expenditures come in at less than budget. So if you look at this, and keep going down, to it says excess of revenues over expenditures, there's a positive $355,000. That generated free cash, because you did good to the budget. But it also, they add back, they don't subtract that negative from the snow and ice, because you raised that on the recap sheet, so they give you credit for that when they're, so they look down, you look down here and see, well, we did good on our excises, we came in 300 higher than budget, and those are the way you generate free cash.
Yeah, of course.
And over time, in these environments, that's the way you're gonna generate free cash, is through your revenues, because the longer you level fund your expenditure budgets, the less money you're gonna get in closeout of appropriations, because costs go up, and if you're level funding, you're not gonna close out as much in appropriations. So being conservative in your revenue estimates, although it's difficult, because you wanna push them so that you can fund more, you won't get free cash if you do that.
No, in fact, I
That's
I credit the fact that we've maintained conservative revenue estimates is why we're in as good a shape as we are coming through this,
I agree.
Financial
And,
crisis.
You've been strong in maintaining your stabilization fund too. At least, unless you used it this year.
Next year.
No, I mean, that's very good, good financial plan. The other one I wanted to show you, just because I think it's interesting, is on page 11. There's been a change in the accounting in probably about the third or fourth year right now that you guys have had new financial statements. And this statement is what the Government Accounting Standards Board wanted when they changed their method of financial statements. And what it does is it shows you by function, in the first column, the expenses. And then it shows you what the revenues that those functions generated in certain, like in the general government, it'll have charges for services, and for that, it could be licenses and permits or anything that from the general government, from the town floor, or anybody that collected the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, and those kinds of things show up as charges for services. Then they have operating grants by function, and it shows you what, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth column over, it says governmental activities, and it shows you what that function of government cost the general tax rate, general revenues. And down the bottom, it shows what the general revenues are. So property taxes, motor vehicle, most state aid, like chapter 70 is considered an operating grant, so that's up in the upper part. But this isn't probably a great report to look at as a snapshot, but it's a good report to look at over time to see which function of government is getting more and more of the general revenues. And it's probably better, instead of just looking at more and more, but on a percentage basis, it's probably better to see who's going up by percentages more and more. But this is one of those reports that isn't on your budget basis. It's, so again, if you gave somebody $1 million and they bought capital assets with it, it's gonna show up as a $20,000 expense, or $40,000 if you're gonna depreciate it over 25 years.
So, to help me better understand
Yeah.
this, let's just take education.
All right,
So, first column is 32,229,229,
yep,
and then charges for services of 1,700,000. These are outside charges that flow into the school,
Yep.
like their
from the special revenue funds, from
bus services,
Yeah.
athletic fees,
tuition, anything like that.
and it's based on your accounting year or whatever,
Yeah,
rather
fiscal
than.
year
okay.
2009.
And then operating grants and contributions, what is that?
That is,
It seems like a very high number.
School choice, it's chapter 70, it's,
IDEA,
yeah, PL 94,
Special.
142,
okay.
so it's anything like that. So chapter 70 is a large number of that.
Is the gift account in there? Is that where their gift account is?
Yes, that's probably, yep, that would be in there too.
So it seems to be, the way I'm looking at this, it seems to be that the number doesn't tie in. If we have a $32 million school budget, and out of the town, the town's share of it was,
But this includes the grants and the grant expenditures too. That's not a school budget. That's grant expenditures revolving. This is any education expenditures regardless of fund. So it's all the special revenue funds.
okay.
Excuse me. So,
Sure.
So you're saying that anything other than from real estate taxes, in essence? is
Well,
what you're
no,
saying?
if you look down a little lower, it says on the bottom half of the page, it says general revenues,
Yeah,
and then it says property taxes, motor vehicle,
right.
penalties and interest. in lieu of tax payments, certain intergovernmental